Hi there, exploring introverts. This month, I dove into habit formation. I'll share a personal example of replacing my Instagram Reels habit, which in all honesty was bordering on an addiction, with language learning and what this experience taught me about habit building and replacing a bad habit with a good habit. Welcome to the Exploring Introvert. I am back today sharing a monthly update with you. What have I been up to? Questions that I have and lessons that I'm learning. And I talk about business, I talk about life and navigating life as an introvert. So let me share my recent experiment with you. I get these notifications on my phone that tell me how many hours I've spent on my phone that week. I know it's a little disturbing. And one day, this notification pops up, and I see that I spent 6 hours on Instagram, specifically watching Reels. So that was a wake-up call. It was almost a full working day that I spent after my working day watching Reels. So this was on a day that my partner was handling bath and bedtime with our son, and I had some time to myself. So I sat down on the couch and I wanted to relax for just a minute, and I put down my phone literally 6 hours later. You can imagine that I was more exhausted than relaxed at this point. I went to bed late, so the next morning wasn't great either. And I realized that I created this bad habit of sitting down on the couch at the end of the day to relax. But what started as relaxation time would turn into procrastination. That turned into lack of sleep. It only made things worse. Although 6 hours was an extreme, looking through the stats, I'd been on my phone for at least 2 hours watching Reels almost every day. It only made me more tired, and I fell into the vicious cycle of tiredness and bad habits. It was not good. And I know that I'm not alone in this. I speak to a lot of introverts who have a similar issue with a bad habit, especially when you're tired and you want to recharge. You have some time to yourself, but instead of recharging in a way that really gives you energy, you waste precious time doom scrolling or binge watching Netflix. So today I'll walk you through what I did to break this bad habit. We'll also talk about some research related to habit building. First, let's talk about habit building. When does a habit become automatic, and how important is it really to be consistent? These are things that we hear all the time, right? A habit is something that you do automatically, or as a behavior that's become automatic, and you gotta be consistent. You gotta do it every day in order for it to become a habit. So, in general, building a habit has 3 parts to it. There's a cue, behavior, and reward. Carl Duhigg wrote about this habit loop in his book, The Power of Habits. He wrote that habits are created by putting together a cue, a routine, and a reward, and then cultivating a craving that drives the loop. In my IG Reels example, the cue was essentially having time to myself at the end of the day, but also being tired. So as an introvert, I crave recharge time after a busy day. Especially when you're tired, your brain will always want to go for the easiest option to get a reward. And in my case, Reels is a really nice dopamine hit for my brain, right? That's my brain's reward system. So that behavior became a routine. When I was tired at the end of the day, I go to sit down on this couch right here and I click open IG Reels. And by the time I broke to 6 hours on Reels, the habit had become basically automatic. I didn't think about opening Reels. I just did it as soon as I picked up my phone. Maybe you're wondering, how long does it really take before a habit becomes automatic? You might have heard that it takes 21 days to build a habit. 21-day challenges or 21-day boot camps. These are all designed to leverage the 21-day rule so that you can create a good habit like eating healthier or exercising regularly. What's interesting is that the 21-day rule is actually a myth. It does not take 21 days to build a habit. In 2009, a study by Lally et al. In European Journal of Psychology showed that it takes anywhere between 18 to 254 days, 66 days on average, for people to adopt a simple habit like drinking a glass of water after breakfast. The study was small, 82 people had enough data to analyze in the end, and they self-reported whether or not the habit became automatic. So if they thought it was automatic, that's what they wrote down. In the study, they used the definition of automatic as a behavior displaying some level of efficiency, lack of awareness, unintentionality, or uncontrollability. That's typically how we think about a habit that's become automatic. Which leads me to the next point, degrees of automaticity. I saw a post from someone on LinkedIn that highlighted this nicely. I couldn't find a post back, so this is from memory. He highlighted that not all habits become entirely automatic. Some things like brushing your teeth or clicking open reels can become what we consider automatic because you don't really think about it, and after a while you just do it, and then suddenly 6 hours have gone by. Imagine brushing your teeth for 6 hours. That one doesn't work quite the same. But other habits like taking a cold shower every morning can still be a habit that is in the sense that it's a repeated behavior, but it never becomes fully automatic, according to the definition from the Lally study. I've been taking cold showers for a few years now, and I can agree that taking a cold shower never becomes fully automatic. Stepping into a cold shower is still something that I do consciously. I have to prepare myself with breath work, but I continue to repeat the behavior because of the reward. In this case, long-term health benefits, and that's important to me. So we now know that it takes anywhere from 18 to 264 days to form a simple habit. The variation is huge between people. And a nice additional finding of the study of the Lally study is that missing one day doesn't have a big impact on sustaining the habit overall. So where did the 21-day rule come from? The 21-day rule came from a book from the 1960s that wasn't really about habits at all. In the book, a plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz, am I pronouncing that right? Probably not. Maxwell Maltz noticed that it took a minimum of 21 days for his patients to get used to their new appearance after surgery. Although he alludes to habit formation in the book, his work didn't actually test how long it takes to form a habit. He suggests that it takes 21 days to assume a new identity in a way. In this case, through the new face that his patients saw in the mirror. And this in itself is an interesting idea when it comes to habit, because changing your habits will ultimately change who you are. Changing your behavior changes how you're perceived by others. It changes how you perceive yourself. So maybe sticking with something for 21 days is less about the habit itself and more about assuming a new identity, becoming the type of person who has this type of habit. Okay, so if there isn't a particular length of time that you need to stick with a habit, is it about consistency? For example, do you need to repeat a habit every day for it to become a habit? So in a study by Lally et al., the participants did repeat their habit every day. In that case, it was drinking a glass of water after breakfast or eating a piece of fruit with lunch, very simple habits. And they would aim to repeat that every day. But they show that missing a day doesn't really impact people's ability to form the habit over time. In the study, they looked at people who missed a day and then did repeat the habit 3 days after. They noted that consistency is important, but the degree of consistency is unknown. In the end, it all comes down to the combination of the cue, the behavior, and reward, the habit loop. If the reward is big enough, you don't need to repeat a behavior very often for it to become a habit. There are some habits that form almost immediately. These habits usually have a strong grip on the dopaminergic reward system in our brain. Think of eating junk food or drinking alcohol or using drugs, or the fast-paced stimulating content that we see on platforms like Reels and TikTok also play into this dopaminergic reward system in your brain. So how did I break my Reels habit? When you want to change a bad habit, the easiest way is to replace it with another good habit. I knew that at the end of the day, I was going to plop down right here on this couch and I would get the urge to scroll, the craving, right? And that was my cue. I could remove the cue. For example, I could temporarily remove the couch from my living room. That would probably disrupt this cue. A bit hard to do. So instead, I focused on the behavior itself. Remember, cue, behavior, reward. I assumed that I'd get the urge to scroll, so I needed to give myself something else to do. I removed the IG app from my phone and installed Babbel, a language learning app. And every time I had the urge to watch Reels, I'd open Babbel instead and take a Spanish lesson. So at first, I didn't like it at all because obviously doing that didn't give me the same dopamine rush as Reels did. It's not that high intensity, fast-paced, reward for your brain. I didn't get the same immediate reward. If you can find a good habit that can give you the same reward as the bad habit did, then you've got absolute gold. But in this case, it was more about breaking the loop and focusing on the long-term benefits that it would bring me, which is up to 6 hours extra time a day. At first, I'd do one Spanish lesson and then I'd stop, but it freed up time to do other things. Like I tidy up the kitchen, I'd shower and go to bed earlier, so I got better sleep. Then I started to enjoy the Spanish lessons and I do a couple of lessons a day. I got up to a 1.1 level, which is still super beginner level, but it's something. After a few months, that slowed down. Now I do a lesson every week or so. And I also reinstalled Instagram because I needed to update my profile, and you can only do that on the mobile app. So this experiment was over the course of a couple of months. I think I started before Christmas last year. I didn't look it up when I installed the Babbel app, but I've been doing that until, and we're now in beginning of April. So how did this experiment pan out? I have noticed that I don't have that strong of an urge to watch endless Reels anymore. I'm going to bed earlier than I was, and I have a couple of extra hours that I'm in the day, and right now I'm using that to do small remodels in our home. And most importantly, I don't feel like I'm wasting time anymore. I feel better about my day. So what can you learn about habit building from this? 21 days to build a habit is a myth. However, repeating something for 21 days could help you to create a new self-identity, becoming the type of person who has this particular habit. When it comes to the habit itself, it varies a lot how long it takes to form a habit, and some habits never become fully automatic. If you want to stop a bad habit, it's easiest to replace it with another good habit. And you can use cue, behavior, reward to understand where you're getting stuck and to change your habit. Although consistency is important, it's not really clear how. It probably depends on the type of habit and how well the cue, the behavior, and the reward are linked to each other. So don't sweat it if you miss a day. It doesn't have a big impact, as shown by the Lally et al. Study. You can still build habits effectively if you know what to focus on. If you want more like this, subscribe or follow. And you can also sign up for my mailing list, Exploring Introvert Letters, for habit insights and tips for introverts directly in your inbox. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.